Hello and welcome to the Be Better podcast, where we believe any and every area of your life has a little more potential that you can tap into to change the course and trajectory of your outcomes. My name is Clarissa Parody and I am your host, and I have worked and trained in the worlds of business strategy, leadership, and performance. And I am the person who believes in and creates success where there appears to be ceilings. And if that sounds like something that's in your world, your reality, and something you want more of, welcome to the show. It is a great day to change your life. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of the Be Better podcast. Today I have Kristen Edmiston. Did I say that right? I want to call you Edmonton. Here it's where we live, and apparently I would like to rename you. Kristen has a book, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal. And I found out about her, and I found out about this book, and I can't believe we haven't met. I don't know how, but it's amazing. But I'm so glad you're here today, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and finally we meet, right? It's all divine. It's all working out as it should. Timing is perfect. And I can't wait to dive in and chat with you today and get to know you a little bit more too.
Oh, honestly, when I was reading your profile and your bio, I was like, we should be friends. This is amazing. So you have gone in and you've started one career, you switched gears into another, and now you have a company and a book. And so obviously it takes a few steps to get there. And let's start at the beginning. Like, who is Kristen and what makes Kristen Kristen, and how did she get here today?
Well, forewarning, it's a convoluted journey, but like we all have those, right? So I'm going to just normalize that right now. And I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't have done it any other way, but it is kind of all over the place. And so I've kind of lived all over Alberta. So as a kid growing up, I've seen a lot of small towns, ended up in Edmonton to go to school. And so my first degree was in nursing. And so my background is I was a former registered nurse, and my specialty was pediatric intensive care. So, I think when I say that, a lot of people do this. And, I have to say it was truly the best job and the worst job imaginable. And it shaped me in so many ways. And I'm so grateful for the experience. I'm still a nurse at heart. I still think about, some of the patients that left their little tiny footprints on my heart and their families. And I think, where we come to today, when we talk about the book, you're going to see some, nursing. Yes. Connection, overwhelm. Yes. Okay. This makes sense. So, that was kind of like the first little puzzle piece, I think, in my career that brought me to where I am today. But I was also the misfit. I was the nerd who was like, well, why do we do it that way? And research says that this would be better. And I'd be walking in with the journal article and, going to the nurse practitioner and like, well, we should do this, don't you think? I've got more evidence if you need it. And sometimes people don't like change. It can feel threatening. It can feel uncomfortable. It can shake the status quo. And that's where we're comfortable. So, I quickly gained this reputation of a bit of a can shaker, and I love change. And I think that's when I started learning a little bit more about myself in that way. But it sort of also put me out there as a leader without me trying to go down that path, right? Because, my definition of leadership, it's multifaceted, but one of the angles is, well, you go first. Right? You go first. Make
Stick
it
out your
safe.
neck a little, right? Like, how can you not, as a leader, be willing to go first or empower others too? Like, you shouldn't, as a leader, for me, I'm like, I won't do anything I wouldn't ask my team to do.
Exactly. Oh, absolutely. Right. But sometimes you've got to go out there and test to see how deep the waters are before you ask the team to come along. Right. And, so I think that was just the natural pull onto the leadership side of things. And I ended up getting groomed for management and went down that path very quickly in my career. Realized I'm not a lover of management. I much prefer leadership, and there's a big difference. And I also realized I was somewhat obsessed with excellence and improvement and quality improvement. And in the pediatric world with nursing and with healthcare, there's a concept called family-centered care. And it's looking at the whole family unit and caring for the whole unit. And that's so, so important. Even if you're an adult, you're treating an adult, you need to look at the whole family unit. That's where the patient goes after they've been in hospital. They all have needs. They all depend upon each other. And so, that whole philosophy around family-centered care, it carried through all of my career when it was quality improvement, process improvement, building on patient experience. Um, and I ended up rolling into different roles, different titles outside of the bedside. I ended up going into more of the administrative side of things, project management, change management, policy, ethics. And it just felt right. Like it always just felt like the natural evolution of my career. I never looked back and said, hey, but I was supposed to be a peds nurse. It was,
Right.
it was iterative and I just trusted it. And I was very fortunate to have some incredible mentors, women mentors in my life who saw something in me and they took me under their wing and they gave me the chances and they nudged me when I needed to be nudged. They picked me up when I fell and dusted me off and they believed in me. And I think that made all the difference too. So I don't know if I really believe in luck, right? You have to be doing the hard work to put yourself in the place where luck can find you. But like I was very fortunate to be able to be in these roles at such a young age.
Well, and what I heard, there's a couple things I just want to circle back to.
Yeah.
Wait, to go in as a relatively young person, right? Or junior in your position, whether you're slightly green, right? You're not a tenured nurse. You're not going to your nurse practitioner being like, we have equal experience,
Mhm.
and you're bringing in new literature and new research. And as you're talking, I'm like, we are the same person. Because for me, I'm like, okay, well, if we're constantly, I always got frustrated with research because it felt like there was a ceiling. Like we have all this government funding to conduct this extraordinary research, and then it would stop at the level of academia. And I graduated university and wanted to get a university. I wanted access to the university library. I was like, I'll pay for it.
Yeah.
And like, absolutely not. They won't let you. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, there's quality research that we could be bringing and applying in day-to-day life, and it's government funded, which means it's taxpayer dollars, and somehow it's not getting out there. Crazy to me. But when you're willing to bring that kind of new information and look for it, and there's a hunger and a thirst for, can it be better?
Mhm.
Can it be easier? Can it be more
Mhm.
effective? Those are the kind of people that are the visionaries that forge the path that, there's an image of like when wolves run through snow, the strongest usually go at the front. So they carve the path for the others behind
Yeah.
them. And they don't let the eldest wolf be at the back of the pack so that they don't get taken out. And I'm like, wow, what a way to care for people. And your focus on family-centered care. Let me tell you, there is something to be said about that, because no matter whether you're occupying change in a health profession or in the workplace, if you don't think what's going on at home or
Mhm.
those dynamics are not in interplay, it's completely false. I've had, I don't know, 5 near-death experiences, and some of them I was a child. I was in the Stollery Hospital. I'm 5 years old. My mom had like, 3 kids with a 4th on the way.
Wow.
Those dynamics are huge at play, and because
Yes.
of the type of care that we received, there was an incubator that I was at least safe if my mom needed to,
Yeah.
and felt loved, even if my mom needed to attend to my obviously younger sisters at the time, like they can't be without a mom too. And it takes someone who's willing to see things differently, to hold space for possibility. And when you're talking about, those mentors before you or who held space for you, who saw something in you, I think that is one thing great leaders can do. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, fail fast, fail forward, fail
Yeah.
again, go,
Yeah.
go, go.
That's
And it,
right.
and you can't let the people who are trying new things stop trying new things because it didn't go well once.
Yeah.
So congratulations to you. That takes endurance. There's a lot of people. How many people do I know that have found one position, one career, and they just said, this feels good. I'm okay here, and don't do
Mhm.
anything else. So, and that's great if they're satisfied and if that's the way they want their life to go. But there also needs to be people who are hungry and thirsty for more, for change, for better, so that
Oh, yeah.
everyone else gets lifted.
Totally.
So good for you. Good
Well,
for you.
thanks. There was no like big picture plan here. I have to totally say that with all of this, right?
Right.
Sometimes we forget that when we hear other people's stories. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, what a beautiful fairy tale or success story. Oh no. Oh no. Like there's so much wrapped into whatever that time frame was. And there was no self-efficacy in the sense of like, I know exactly what I'm doing and where this is taking me. Nope. No, but I learned to lean into those people around me who knew more, had been doing it longer, and trusting their leadership and
Mm,
their vision, right? And surrendering to that a little bit because I knew that they had my best interests at heart. And to be mentored, you need to be a willing mentee, right? So I
mhm.
learned a lot about that in mentorship as well. And that's humility. And that is just being okay with the failure, all of that. It was huge. I was very lucky though. I mean, these were pretty incredible human beings. And I feel a great responsibility to pay that forward. Very,
Amazing.
very much so. That's a big part of who I am now.
Oh, that is so fun. I think it's really important, especially when you're you kind of grew up in the
Mm.
world of being mentored and in the willingness to be mentored, it means you have to go left when you want to go right.
Mhm.
And sometimes trusting that process is so powerful. So when you're mentoring someone else, giving that like creating that I'll call it an incubator, a petri dish of
Mm.
possibility, giving
Yeah,
them space to say, I'll go left. I don't know. Left is unfamiliar. I don't feel great about it,
yeah.
but I'm willing to trust you
Mhm.
to give that a go. So
For
that's
sure.
incredible. Good for you.
Yeah, it was to be kind of at that stage of learning and growth when there was that external impact as well. Like, talk about learning fast and on your feet really, really quickly. It was just trial by fire. I was forced into it and it was just paddle, like, like the busy little duck feet under the water, just go, 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 go. And it worked. It worked out well.
It's interesting when you say that because when we look at studies of what makes for highly effective problem solving, it's
Mhm.
usually in the fire.
Of
Uh,
course.
culture code. Oh my gosh, what's his last name? Coyle, I think is his last name. Doyle, maybe. I'll confirm. Check the show notes. Culture code in that book, they talk about how, there was the same problem given to Harvard business grads, a group of Harvard business grads, and a group of kindergartners, 5-year-olds.
Mm,
And
mhm,
who solved the problem faster and better?
mhm.
Well, the Harvard business grads did what they are taught to do, which is, think about it, strategize. Whereas kids went into test, retest really fast,
That's
and they
right.
had very short communication bursts of communication. And what I found fascinating about that is how many, like there's that thing. It's like, who said it? If there's a problem, you should spend 90% of your problem and 10% of your time on the solution. I was like, is that true? I think
Mm,
it's Einstein who said that. I'm like, but if we look at the data, sometimes that's not true.
yeah.
And so that trial by fire can actually have you discover things that you maybe wouldn't have tested otherwise, that you wouldn't have gone through otherwise, to create discoveries that wouldn't have been possible if we sat around a table and
Mm,
just strategized our whole way through it.
yeah.
Because how many times have you made a plan and God laughs? like, oh,
No. No, it's true, right? And I
mm,
and I talk about this in the book and just generally with my clients now is,
mm,
we don't always have to have the answers, but you need to figure out your trajectory. That's not even the destination. That's just trajectory. And you need to figure out how to build momentum. And with those two things, you can go. You can proceed. And you don't have to have it all figured out. And these are just things that I have inherently picked up along the way through my own experiences and knowing that it just worked out. And, it was this really unexpected bit of adversity came at me right at this time. So I had all these things going for me: opportunity, mentors, learning, growth, all of it. But I realized very quickly that when I went into these leadership meetings, I was the youngest one in the room, like by 10, maybe 15 years. And I tell this story where I was in a very senior level meeting on behalf of my boss. I was filling in for her, and someone asked me if I was there to bring the water. Like, where's the water? Where's the coffee? And it was just this moment of self-awareness all of a sudden of like, oh, that's how I'm perceived. And oh, this isn't okay on so many levels. And it was this, okay, I need to do something about this. I can't age myself overnight. I have to gain the experience to get that credibility. I need to, prove and demonstrate that I'm capable of holding this seat. So as soon as I have the chance to open my mouth, okay, I've got you. But what about getting in the room? And I think a lot of women in particular struggle with this barrier, right? If it's a man and a woman walking into the room with the equal amount of, their same age, same credentials at the same time, who's trusted more first? And often it can be the man. And that was the first sign for me to say, no, you need to correct this, whatever is within your control. And so I decided to go back to school and get my MBA. I'm like,
Oh,
you know what?
fun.
You can't argue with the credentials. I can go back to school, build my the depth of my knowledge, the breadth of my knowledge. So it was a bit of a like, well, screw you. I'm just gonna go do this. And I did.
Kristen, it's just like I'm interviewing me. It's just the strangest thing. Because my experience was like, it's still the same. I mean, I was actually having a conversation about this, like the whole man versus woman in a boardroom. I think I was just blind to whether or not I was female or not. And I was like, no, you will trust me.
Yeah.
And maybe they didn't, but I gave myself that illusion. The comment I would get, and I still get to this day, and don't be fooled, I'm basically middle-aged, that I look very young comparatively. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And so I was like, well, I might be young, but I can be the smartest. I can be the most informed. And the other thing I took away, so my background's in theater. Growing up, I was in the arts. I really felt I was like, Broadway calls. Incorrect. I don't think I would have been satisfied on Broadway. Going to Broadway, different story. Being in Broadway, probably, I don't do late nights. It's not my jam. But yeah, so I was like, okay, well, there's a reason you have wardrobe and costumes in films and in musical theater. And so I would love to pretend that what I wear doesn't matter. But when I throw on a blazer and a pair of slacks, I'm like, whatever, it's a costume. And so I didn't make anything mean about it. I didn't get upset that people might judge the fact that or be upset that I should have to wear this. I was like, no, if I am an actor and the whole world is a stage, why not put on what you want people to believe that you are? We do it for Halloween. We're not like, oh, you're dressed like an Oompa Loompa, you must be a vampire. We don't do that. So I'm like, well, why not play the game? Play the game. The psychology of humans is that when we look at something, we make a value assessment, not necessarily good, bad, or like better than or less than. We're like, oh, that is a vampire. We assess what it is, or that is hot, that is cold, and then go with it. But I also got my master's. I was like, you can't. I will wear a blazer, and then I will have another degree, and then I'll show you who's boss. And turns out, I maybe didn't need to do that, but it's what I did. So what was your experience like with your master's? Do you think, did it flip a switch for you? Did it make you like, what was the impact of taking that schooling on for you in your personal experience as well as your career?
Oh, that's a lot to unpack, but I mean, I realized I'm pretty tough. I'm pretty tough, because the demand of the job was such that it was about 50 hours a week in my role. So I was an executive director at this point. So I had advanced very quickly. So, it's roughly 50 hours a week. The 10 are kind of behind the scenes, of course. I was a mom, right? So I had a little guy who had soccer 3 nights a week and was very much attached to his mama. And so just working through the guilt of, what does that look like and how do I show up? I had recently remarried, so starting a whole new life with this person and trying to build that foundation. Like all of it, it was so much of just life all at once. And I talk a lot about the whole human, right? So it's not just career. It's never just career. It's never just professional. Your personal life will always creep in. Your professional life will always creep into your personal life. We are whole human beings. There's no division.
No, and that's why that's me. I said this on my other podcast. It's like work-life balance is a lie because I don't cut myself off. And this part of Clarissa stays at home and this part of Clarissa goes to talk to people and does her job. I'm like, no. Even if my time is split evenly, that doesn't mean balance.
Not at all. Not at all. I feel really strongly about this one. And it does tie back to the book in that I don't believe in balance. I would love to substitute in the word harmony, meaning that it could be a 90-10 split, but you could still be in harmony. You could still be at peace with it. Right? Because balance is a farce. As soon as you get to that point of equilibrium, a nanosecond later, something's moved over to the left or the right. So if you're chasing balance, stop, because you'll never feel like you get there. You'll never feel like you get there anywhere.
If you're chasing balance, oh my gosh, if you're chasing balance, the one thing you're chasing is just like dissatisfaction.
Yes.
In my opinion. And I understand it's like, okay, fine. maybe you don't want hustle culture, but
Mhm.
I'm a big, you say joy, or you say harmony, I say joy. I'm like, give me joy. Because
Yeah.
life is full of seasons.
Mhm.
And there are seasons like this summer is a prime example of where I've worked more than I've ever worked in my life on this couple projects. I slept the least I've ever slept and also felt so alive.
Yeah.
Not because I'm running on adrenaline, because I don't think I have adrenals left anymore from all that stress about doing my schooling and being accepted by society, normal things.
Mhm.
But now I was like, oh my gosh, my cup is so full. Oh my gosh, we got to make an impact. Oh my gosh, I got to grow and enroll my team. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, look what happened. And so that fulfillment didn't come from balance. That fulfillment came from an alignment with what I value and executing on it and living purposefully and meaningfully.
Yeah.
And that creates both harmony and joy. That's like, I think
Yeah.
like that is, and joy, I feel like so many people can't relate to that word. And what a tragedy. What a
It is sad.
tragedy.
Yep. We're too busy sacrificing. I
Mm,
talk a lot about, sacrificing our most valuable resources. So this is a key concept of the book. Our most valuable resources are our time, our money, and our energy. And people get time and money, right?
yeah.
It's pretty easy to understand. But your energy, that's your joy. That's your motivation. That's your resiliency. That's your inspiration, right? And so rule of life, and this is the advice I now give to my 19-year-old son,
How is
right?
that
That
possible?
happened.
How is that possible?
It
You,
happened like that.
you look like fantastic. That's
Well,
literally
thank you.
a mathematical marvel. Like, I don't know. You have escaped the aging paradigm. Congratulations.
Depends on the day. Let me tell you, it depends on the day and the lighting,
Let me
always.
tell you, hydration will always make you look younger.
True,
That's what I have learned.
true. So true. But simple for him, simple advice for someone who's 19 or 90. Follow your joy.
So true.
Follow your joy. And
Yeah.
the rest will sort itself out.
And inject it. Like if sometimes there's going to be, okay, so my least favorite thing in the world to do is Excel spreadsheets. And sometimes I have
Mm,
to do them, but I'm like, okay, if I'm going to have things that make me want to grind my teeth, then where am I inserting joy? Because
yeah.
sometimes you're going to do stuff that you don't love. And the thing is, a little bit of joy goes a really long way.
Yeah.
Goes a really long way. Find what works for you. For me, like trees. Oh my gosh. My family would tell you all I talk about is trees. I'm like, have you read the
Oh,
book, The Secret Life of Trees? Have you hugged a tree? Do you know that trees make music? Like all of these things. And I get so excited by it that I feel full. And what was 3 hours of sleep feels like 8. And
oh, yeah.
all of
Totally.
those things. And the rule of energy in general is a lie. Like, where do you get energy from?
Mhm,
Food. Are you sure? How do you feel after
mhm.
Thanksgiving dinner? Where do you get it from?
Yes.
Sleep.
Mm,
Is that true? Because I've had 8 hours of sleep and woke up feeling like trash, and I've had a quality amount of sleep and felt way better.
yeah.
So we've linked these things as if they're direct lines when really they're dotted.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
we forget to do the things that make us human,
Mhm.
that create connection, and that fill our spirits.
Yes.
And we should be best friends.
Oh, I think this is the beginning of something really great.
I was
Just
like,
saying. Watch out.
I'm feeling really warm. Like I'm really excited. My house is cold, but I'm like, my body feels
Oh,
warm. It's
but
very
that's
nice.
good. But case in point, this is why we need to connect with others. This is why we need to initiate conversations and put ourselves out there because we're missing out on great stuff if we don't, right? This is why. This is why you have to muster up that activation energy to do the hard things because it could result in connection. And that is just so many ripples from there.
So many ripples. There was one thing I was listening, I think it's Alex Hormozy was saying it. He was talking about how, we look at a local goal versus like what he calls a global goal. So something bigger. So
Mhm.
for one of the things that one of my pillars of life that just makes me feel so good is when I feel full of vitality. And I
Mhm.
know that what gives that to me is like being active and using my body and end of range strength. I never want to look at a trampoline and be
Mhm.
like, ooh, I should not go on that. I don't want to do that. I have young people in my life. I'm like, I want to play with them. I want to go. My phrase of this year is be bold, be brave, all in, all out. And so now I'm like, okay, well, I better deliver. So we've been doing all of these things to keep you vital, but that means my local goal, my local thing, which is like instant gratification.
Yes.
What makes me happy right now? That, chocolate croissant. Like, oh my God, so good.
Mhm.
But does that really support my overall goal when I
Right.
know that I feel like trash after I eat it? I need a nap because
Yeah.
I have a blood sugar situation that I don't even have diabetes, but maybe I
Yeah.
could if I keep doing that. But my global goal is if I tap into that, the hard stuff, which is getting up every morning and moving my body, because you know how nice my bed is at 5:30, 4:30 in the morning. It's really nice.
Yes.
It's warm. I'm in the right spot. I've got an animal snuggling. I don't want to leave, but my global goal is so much more powerful than that local thing. If I can remember and tap into it, that is going to keep you doing the hard things.
Yes.
Or what feels like hard, because do I ever finish a workout and be like, damn it, I wish I didn't do that. What a terrible decision.
Never, never. And you know what this makes me think about is this concept of, and I hear this a lot in the fitness community and the fitness, social media. It's about discipline. It's about discipline. It's not about discipline. Discipline gets you through the very finite short term, but it's not sustainable. The adrenals run out, right?
Been there,
but
done
the
that.
motivation, that's what you need to look for. And so if it's that global goal that is your motivator, tap into it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's this myth around, it's be disciplined. No, that's not going to last very long. You're going to be burnt out, tired, demotivated, deflated, and feel like you aren't capable. No,
it's so tough. And like for me, I mean, I don't know what I would call it discipline, but I had to practice it.
Yes.
I was like, okay, this is a practice. This is not a perfect, because discipline can sound very like, I like when people call me disciplined, because I'm like, have I fooled you? But what it really is it's something, I know what my long-term vision is. I know what I want to feel like at the end of the day. I want to know that I can contribute throughout my day and then do my fun stuff after, or do my fun stuff first and still have energy for all the other commitments I've made for my professional life. And it was a practice. It was a practice. It was not a perfect. And more than that, it's that I chose what I wanted before I did it.
Right.
And that desire and that choosing can keep me going even when I don't, because discipline takes energy as much as anything else. And motivation can be fleeting, but my rule is like the 15-minute rule.
Yes.
So I personally hate folding socks. Like it's the least, I would rather throw them in a bin unconnected and then punish myself on a Friday night by putting them together. So now I'm like, okay, rather than a punishment, what if I make it a fun? And so my 15-minute rule kicks in. I'm like, okay, well, all I have to do is do it for 15 minutes. And all of a sudden I'm motivated. All of a sudden you have to give, if you don't give yourself space to be motivated, to experience that like internal fire lighting, it's not a rush of adrenaline at that moment. It's inspiration. Inspiration is to have life breathed into you. And by giving yourself space to be breathed into, the person who's inhaling is you. So give yourself space to get there.
Yes.
And so often we don't.
So often we don't. And you know what? I call it, we're going to get to this, but I call it the power of one. So simplify it, right? Create something that is manageable and doable that you can get excited about. You're making it easy instead of overwhelming, because the power of one is the antidote to the overwhelm. Oh my God. And suddenly doing the socks isn't that overwhelming, right? No. It's not so scary.
No, it's really not. I really want to dive in. We keep touching it. This is great because we kind of like added all your book all the way around. And I'm like, haha, this is fantastic. I love it. And you know what? One thing that I have as I've gotten older, I'm unavailable for drama and I'm unavailable for overwhelm. I'm like, I ain't got time for that. You know, the recovery time for drama and overwhelm is real long. It's like a man cold and I am not interested.
I love that. But it's dangerous, right? The overwhelm, when you think about it, here's the pain point. This is why it's a problem. And it's why I wrote the book, to create a solution to it. It slows us. It stalls us. It stunts us. And worst case scenario, it stops us.
Sucks the life right out of you.
It does. And the overwhelm it's a universal culprit. If you're human, you're susceptible to the overwhelm. So this applies to everyone, really every age, every circumstance, every profession, wherever you live. It crosses all boundaries, that we know this as a universal experience, the overwhelm. But the damaging effects, how do you get to your excellence potential? Because that's my goal, is trying to help people get to their excellence potential. How do you get there when you're stalled, stopped, stunted by overwhelm? What if we could remove that? Wow.
And like, what happens when you're in overwhelm? You're on repeat.
Oh,
the same thoughts, the same patterns. What do you say to yourself when you're in overwhelm? What do you say to yourself? The same things you always say to yourself in overwhelm. Oh my God, this again, this is so hard. Like you start hearing also the lies you feed to yourself.
Totally.
like when I'm in overwhelm, I'm like, oh my God, I'll never get this done. I'll never get this done. That's what I say to myself. You know what I've never done? I've never not gotten it done.
That's
Like,
right.
so I realized in that moment what the overwhelm was a lie. The overwhelm lies to you. And when you can separate yourself from the overwhelm, you can be like, oh, shoot.
I see you. You
So
stay over there.
You're a dirty liar.
That's right.
And you can complain, but you don't actually get to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No,
You did
this
your
is good.
MBA and then you
So-
wrote a book. Let's fill in those gaps and let's
There's a
talk about
few-
what you wrote.
There's a few things.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Things in there. So I got the MBA, and fun fact, I actually did it with my brother. So my brother is 6 years older than I am, and he went into pharmacy and I went into nursing. And
You
our
guys have a theme.
yes, and our career paths were kind of like this. And I kind of dragged him along to the orientation session. I'm like, you should do your MBA with me. And he did.
I love
So,
that.
What a gift. We got to graduate together. It was super special.
I'm moved by that. That's so sweet.
It was incredible. It was a very, very special highlight in my life for sure.
Oh, no kidding.
But it wasn't long after that point when there was how there's like little markers in your life. You remember those moments you're like, oh yeah, that's when the domino fell. I had one of those.
Oh.
And it was at the retirement party for my boss. And she was a very senior executive in the organization. And she was retiring after 30 years, illustrious career. Huge mentor to me. Worshiped the ground she walked on. Like, she was just everything. And they were celebrating her and all her accomplishments in her 30 years. But I was struck like a bolt of lightning, like 30 years doing the same thing. No, like, where's the exit? And that was this epiphany for me, that even though I had invested education, time, energy, blood, sweat, tears, all of it into this career path that I thought I wanted, that I was being groomed to climb this corporate ladder that really wasn't truly aligned with who I was on the inside, and figuring that out, that it was a trap. This was a trap to lock you in for 30 years.
Golden handcuffs.
That's right. And I decided to bolt. And so I quit after some soul searching. And the tricky thing is, if you're a nurse with an MBA and you don't work in the healthcare system, what do you do?
What do you do?
What do you do? Well, you go and become a consultant.
Amen, sister.
Nondescript title ever. But yeah, I decided to redefine who I was, reconnect with who I was. And this was January of 2013 that I quit. And I had started up my business consulting firms, KEA Edmiston Associates, KEA Consulting. And there was no intention to consult back to healthcare. It was going to be government agencies, larger corporate teams, small businesses, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I felt like I had enough experience, knowledge, life skills, education to be able to do that in that kind of a role. So I started that and started the business with all the hiccups and all the growing pains that you get with starting a business. Fell into some contracts and things just started to snowball, and got the referrals. It was really quite smooth. But 4 months after I quit, we got news that my dad was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor.
Oh.
And context, my mom had passed away several years before. So she had died quite young. She was only 59.
Wow.
And we were very close. And then my dad and I were incredibly close. And the rug was ripped from beneath me, and I had to reevaluate everything. And of course, being the nurse, like, are you the nurse? Are you the daughter?
Yeah.
You're both.
You can't separate the whole.
You can't separate the whole. And so he lived out of town. We went through all the motions of getting him here to Edmonton so me and my siblings could take care of him. And they gave him a year with treatment. And this is where I tapped in back to my nursing days and everything that I had learned through the really tough stuff in PICU around death, dying, trauma, all of it, family-centered care. And I just said, you know what, we're going to do everything we can to help my dad have a beautiful death. And I know that sounds weird in some ways to some people. When you've seen death over and over, and you've seen good death, you've seen hard death. For my dad, the best gift I could give him was a beautiful death.
Right.
And so my sister and I were, predominantly his primary caregivers, and we supported him throughout the journey and treatments. And we just decided to look for the joy and the laughter. And he was the same way. And it was such an incredible journey. I'm so grateful that I quit my corporate job that was 50 hours a week. 4 months later, had all the flexibility in my schedule that I could ever want.
Right.
To be with him, care for him, and have him have a beautiful death. Like, you want to talk about divine
timing. I was just thinking, I was like, if you just let things work out, they will.
They will.
And in it, I mean, some people, I had a conversation with one of my other guests that, but I've heard it must be nice. And I'm like, yeah, but I was willing to take the risk, which wasn't so nice.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And and that level of, I mean, there's one of the mentors I have talks about 6 human needs: certainty, uncertainty. We love things that when they're safe and they feel familiar. We also love variety, which is why a lot of us will watch we'll binge watch the same TV shows.
Yeah.
We know we like it, but we can't fully remember everything the characters say.
Mm-hmm.
And significance, like, does it make a difference? Do I feel important or valued? And then there's growth and love and connection and all those wonderful things. And I'm like, well, if you don't have certainty, if you're willing to let go of that a little bit, you have space for that, whether it's divine intervention or luck or whatever you want to call it. For me, it's definitely divine intervention.
Yes.
But I have held my breath while leaping before, being like, oh, one eye open. I really hope I land on something soft. Yep. But it takes something. So it's, I mean, amazing that you were willing to bet on yourself and take that risk. And how it all worked out is just grace and space. Grace and space.
100%. 100%. And, I mean, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about resiliency through my dad. I've done motivational talks on resiliency through the story of my dad who had terminal cancer, right? Like, it seems like a juxtaposition, but wow, it was literally the recipe for resiliency, watching him through his journey and being a part of it with him. And something that spun out of that journey that is a huge part of who I am today, which resulted in also the book, is I skipped the part where before I left my corporate career, I also opened up a jewelry design business. So that's my creative outlet. I'm a jewelry designer on the side, and I just love
sparkling. Well, now I must see it. I mean, not in this moment, but after this conversation, we should talk.
And I mean, there's a story how that all started because of my mom and her creative outlet. But anyway, I won't go there. You just need to know that I was a jewelry designer at this very same time. And so, of course, I had a studio filled with supplies. And Dad, he was, we moved him into hospice about 3 months before he passed. And it was about November-ish. Yeah. And he was really starting to lose his mobility and his ability to write, and those things that we take for granted that are really, really important. But he was cognitively 100% alert and with us.
Right.
But that's hard too, because he's seeing himself deteriorate also. It was just so heartbreaking in so many ways. But he said to my sister and I, girls, I really want to do something special to thank all the people that have supported me on my journey. And he was originally from England. He immigrated from England when he was about 20 years old. And so he'd kept in touch with a lot of people back home. And after my mom had passed, he ended up meeting this group of women, aged 30 to 45, who were on a message board, on the BBC message board. And it was this little clique of women who they would talk about work and family and all the things. And they kind of adopted him as a surrogate dad. And he was the lone male, but the voice of wisdom and reason and sharp-witted humor. And he'd never met any of them in person, but he especially wanted to do something special for the girls. And it was around Christmas time, of course. And he's like, will you help? Chris, help me find something. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm at hospice 12 hours a day with you. I cry myself to sleep every freaking night. I'm trying to start my own business. I have a son who's losing his grandpa, and they were very, very close too. Okay, sure, Dad. So I came back to the studio.
Let's.
Yeah, came back to the studio, and I do believe very strongly in divine intervention. And I went to my studio and I kind of stood in front of the cabinets and I'm like, okay, tell me, what do I do? And I swear to this day, I heard a whisper and it was angels, angels. And I'm like, okay, how do I make angels? And I'm like, okay, I think for some reason I have little silver wings. I've never used them in jewelry before, but I think I ordered some. And then I'm like, well, I just need like a little dress. And there's these bracelet ends made out of Swarovski crystal that as a cone, like that could be a dress. And then all you need is a head and a halo. You have an angel. And I was going to bring one to show you. They're about this big.
Oh, cute. How
And
sweet.
so I took it into dad. I took all the supplies. And of course, we all bawled. My sister and my dad and I, we just cried because of the symbolism of everything. And we made these angels. We made about 30 of them. And he got to tell me, this one's for Vanessa. This one's for Lisa. This one is for right. And he asked us to handwrite little Christmas cards and send them over to England, which we did. And the thing is, though, in a hospice, you're making angels, people pay attention. So the nursing staff and the doctors and patients' families, they're like, what's this? Could I get an angel? These are beautiful. And dad's like, well, we should give angels to my friends where I used to live and to our relatives and to the doctors and the nurses. So now it's like, okay, we need more angels. And my dad was quite tech savvy for his age, and the way he communicated with a lot of his friends was on Facebook. And he was even losing the ability to type. So we would often go in and type for him. He would tell us what to say, and we would type to his friends, these women over in the UK. And we got to know them too. And they were truly like angels that surrounded us. And as these angels started to land, these little tiny charms, unbeknownst to us, they had created a plan where they were going to take a picture of their angel and make it their profile picture. So when dad opened up Facebook, that's what he saw.
Oh, that is so sweet.
And it was like this circle of angels that just surrounded him on his final days. And wild, but everybody that was friends with these people in the UK were like, what's this angel? What's this profile picture? And the next thing you know, we're getting messages, prayers, letters, well wishes from complete strangers around the world for dad because of these angels that we didn't think was a big deal. But so long story short, but I connected with two people that used to work with CTV News who are incredibly close friends of mine now, and they ended up telling our story on the news. And that took off even more, and we were even more inundated. And it was like this just, I don't know, huge rush of love and energy that came to dad when he needed it the most and when we needed it the most. And dad said, if it helps one person, you have to keep it going after I'm gone. Promise me. And so my sister and I did. And he passed away in January. And then March 1st, we started a Facebook page. It was called A Circle of Angels to honor the women that had surrounded dad in his final days. And the idea was we were going to make and sell these small little charms, donate the proceeds to different charities, do random acts of kindness in the community, and help people feel like they aren't alone. Right. And so, I bought a bag of angel wings. There was 1,000 angel wings in this bag. And I thought, no, like never in a million years am I going to make 1,000 angels. Like these are going to go in the garbage, right? Well, that was 7 years ago. And we have now made and sold or given away over 40,000 angels. And we've donated well over $15,000 to different charities from these little tiny charms.
Who are you?
Oh, no, it's not me. It's not me, because the people that this has attracted, let me tell you, the people that come and make the angels with us, the people that have rallied in these community projects that we've done, we did 2,000 angels in one night for the EPS when Constable Woodall was shot and killed in one night because of 50 volunteers, right?
Wow.
I mean, and we have story after story after story like that. So we just went first, but we aren't the reason why this has worked. It's the incredible energy and people that have come around it.
Well, and I think it just also goes to show what the power of an intention. Your intention was to create a beautiful death for your dad.
Yeah.
And you going in and asking for guidance and being willing to hear a whisper, willing to hear a knock. And what blows me away regularly is that the answer is always available. The resources are always right in front of you. You just have to be willing to see them.
Yes.
And willing to see the situation differently. So like angel wings, you've never used. And when you set the intention for the overall global goal of this beautiful end of life. And then you lead me, show me, help me see what I can't see. And you didn't think it was a big deal at the time. This goes to show how many times have we had ideas, they're like, that's not a big deal. And we diminish them. We don't think it, and over 40,000, is that what you said? Angels, are you $15,000? That is remarkable. That's remarkable. That's unexpected, unprecedented. Like from a what? From the end of a Swarovski bracelet thing. Like and it goes to show being resourceful, being creative, being willing to see the end of something that is meant, this specific part, this specific idea, this specific job title is meant to do this thing, but it could also be used for. And that willingness to be creative and see things differently, no matter what your circumstances are, whether it's jewelry design for your father, or if it's how are you running this boardroom, or what book are we going to write? It's just the resources are there. Be willing to see them differently.
Absolutely. And this ties back to the book too. And this is, I think, where I really figured out abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. Right. So we were in a place where everything felt scarce. Let me tell you, time was super scarce. Energy was super scarce, all of it. And we felt like we were kind of at a rock bottom point. And yet with gratitude's so critically important. With gratitude, what we had was enough. That time that we had with Dad was enough. Getting 30 angels over to the UK, that was enough. Right. And so we took this, like literally the hardest time in my life for sure. And in a place where looking from the outside in, it looks like just pure scarcity. It was so abundant. Right. There was so much abundance. And what do you do with that abundance? You pay it forward.
Absolutely.
So how could this not be a pay it forward project where you do kind things for others and you express gratitude and you try to lift them when they're down? How do you not? And ever since then, I have been operating in this place 99% of the time of an abundance mindset, and it changed everything, absolutely everything.
And it's a practice, right? Like in that moment, like when I was exposed to death very young, and too often, honestly, in my life, like recent, everyone just has their ends of life. And the way I was born into my family, that just the way the timing is, a lot of people were aging. Some people had unexpected passings. And the hardest grieving processes for me were when I resisted it, when I thought it was unfair, unjust, shouldn't have happened. And I'm like, one of the hardest grieving processes for me were my grandparents, because I mean, I'm blessed enough to still have my mother and father. But my grandma and grandpa were the one and the same. They were just like really cool mom and dad. And resisting their deaths was the most torturous thing I could have done for myself. And it made me available for overwhelm. It made me available for doubt, denial, grief, lack of energy. And when I shifted, I noticed specifically with my grandpa, when I was like, I'm just going to be with him as much as possible. Because if one of the paradigms I remember learning is, if I'm in a 3-day seminar and they ask how much of the seminar is left. And I'm like, well, 2 days. They're like, no, 100% of the seminar is left. If you're looking at what is left, it's 100%. So you how much time do you have left with your grandpa? 100% of your time, of the time that he's available. I was like, oh my God, I have everything. And that it was such a weird shift for me. Like I didn't get it. And then it clicked into place, and I was like, oh my God, I have all the time in the world. And if I choose to use it in a way that's meaningful, and that alignment, absolutely committed in that mindset of like, I get to spend these last hours of all the people he'll want to spend time with. It's probably his family. Like if I had to just throw wild guess out there, and it really made that process that much better. And it's still sad to see someone pass.
Of course.
It's still sad. And I still miss him, of course. But it's like, when you don't resist what is, and you can get present to what is so, there is peace. There is space and grace and peace. It's a great place to be.
The harmony, right? It's what I'm always looking for. That's what I'm always trying to work towards. And you can have harmony in your saddest moments. I know that sounds kind of backwards and strange, but it's like a beautiful death. I think you can have harmony and sadness too. Like you can hold success and failure at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We're such a black and white, having to know, is it this or is it that? There's a whole lot of greatness right in between. So
100%.
yeah.
We're a very reductionist society.
Yes.
We want it to be the cause of my weight gain was I ate too many Cheetos. And it was like, well, actually, you're super stressed. Your adrenals are shot. There's no amount of lettuce that's going to save you unless you meditate a little bit. So look at the whole system, the whole human, and the harmony of the elements, all elements in the system, because you yourself are an ecosystem. You operate in your micro ecosystem, and then you're part of a macro system. And when we can get that, the harmony makes that much. Well, of course you want to operate in harmony. Of course you do. You don't want to cause discord or dissonance, because it actually affects the whole system, which is why, to go back to your earlier comment about family-centered care, is so critical. So critical. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm so sorry. That was a really beautiful story. I got taken away.
No, it's good. It's good. But this is the thing. See what happened though. When we open up about really hard things, we make it safe for other people to do the same.
Absolutely.
And that's why I have no trouble ever talking about grief or loss, because this is how we make it make sense. This is in our hearts and in our heads. And again, it's a universal experience. Every single one of us, we're going to experience loss. We're going to experience grief. So let's talk about it. Instead of internalizing it and getting overwhelmed, let's get it out. Right.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah, no, it was a huge part of what brought me to where I am today. It still is. It's never going to end. I just have endless gratitude for the people that have brought me to where we are and continue to be a part of my life. I've met the most incredible people through this project. It's incredible. But we kept going with the business. After I'm trying to get back to like, how did we get to where I am now? Consultant title,
waymaker, whatever.
Oh gosh. Well, and I mean, to be fair, like building the creative business, I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary for Kemba Designs, which is my jewelry design company, in August. So 10 years. So built it from scratch, did everything the hard way, from marketing to business planning to all of it. Thank goodness I had the MBA to get me some book smarts in there. And then for KEA Consulting in December, I'm celebrating my 10-year anniversary. So it's 10 years, that's a whole decade. I'm going to be like, okay, that's a milestone.
That is a milestone.
For small businesses, that's a milestone to still be trucking along after 10 years.
No kidding.
But I think it's been because I've had to keep morphing and pivoting and changing and shifting. And I did that a lot. And then the pandemic hit. And then all of that stuff that was typically government contract work and larger corporations where it was team building and bringing people together in the same room, which is what I got really good at and what I did for 90% of my work, didn't exist anymore. Right? Oh, okay. Now what? And that's when I learned to fall in love with small business consulting.
Very good.
And I call it strategy partnership. I do not call myself a coach. There may be some coaching in what you get with me, but there's also going to be some mothering and some nurturing and nursing, because that's just who I am. But I am not trained as a coach. I don't have a certification as a coach. I am everything that I've told you so far: a nurse with an MBA and some life experience and a jewelry designer. But I believe bringing that to the table as an equal partner for strategy, helping in small business, that's a lot. And that's what I love to do. And I got to do a lot more of it in the early days of the pandemic. And through that, I realized the overwhelm was so real and so magnified. And I had this epiphany. If we hadn't been operating in a state of overwhelm before the pandemic had hit, we wouldn't have been as knocked out at the knees when it did. That's not okay. That's not okay that we were so burnt out and exhausted and overwhelmed that we, in some cases, businesses just fell apart like dust. And the 10 years of business and hard work and passion and blood, sweat, and tears, poof, gone. And the overwhelm was often the culprit. And I just decided that's not okay. This isn't okay to be talking face to face with a small business owner who feels overwhelmed, feels stuck, stunted, stalled, or wants to completely stop when this is their dream. This is their life purpose. This isn't
Right.
okay. Not okay. And that's when I had this, again, domino moment conversation with one of my clients. And she said to me, she's like, Kristen, like, what system do you use to keep like all your stuff together? Like, how do you keep yourself so organized? And because you've got the 2 businesses and then the angels and then the family, how do you do it? And I just held up my little bullet journal thing that I had. I'm like, oh, I've got this. And she's like, well, what is that? I said, oh, it's just a system I've kind of, used over the years. And I've picked up, best practices from habits stacking and time management. And, like just picked up all these little things along the way. And I said, I'm kind of nerdy and I research this stuff all the time. And so I just use it. And she's like, can you show me? Can I use your system? I'm like, well, of course. And then I went, hold up. Maybe this could help more than one person. Maybe this has some merit to it. And so I started kind of fleshing out the theory behind it as to why it worked. And then I went back and actually did the hard research, right? And I actually made the notes and I drew the diagrams and I put all the pieces together with all of the sticky notes. And I'm like, I stood back and I said, this is a philosophy. This is a way of being. This is how I operate my life. I just sort of put it down on paper in this book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a theory. And when I went back to my client and I was explaining it to her and I said, well, just make sure you keep everything in one book. Like, none of this 6 journals and a day timer, you got to keep it all together. That's part of the system. That's part of the theory. She's like, oh, like the one book. And I went, yep, the one book.
Well, thank you for my title, ma'am. That was great.
Right?
No brainstorming session needed. It was like that. Again, it's always in front of you. The answer is always there because it is. The resources are always there because they are.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's so many things like when we ask people, how did we learn to do it? And it's often test, retest, get curious, try, does that work? Does that make sense? Because there are things where I'm like, that does not work for me. But when you can consolidate it and make it something that's scalable or replicable for most people, it's shocking. And I haven't had a chance to peek through a book. I think I get it this week. And I'm like, my gosh, like I was flipping through some of the like notes about it. I was like, when you incorporate all of those elements, it's the as you said, the way of being, the way of thinking. Because one of the greatest coaching moments I've had in my life is when one of my coaches said, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I was like, that's a bold statement.
That's heavy. That's a lot.
I was like, that's mean and also probably accurate. And I looked at it. I was like, is that true? Is that true? And I found it in so many areas of my life in that one particular way of thinking, way of being. And I was like, oh, wow, that's stifling me. And so if you find a way to do something, a way of being that holds space for you to thrive, a place where you can keep everything together, imagine what is possible.
Yeah.
Imagine what is possible. I'm still that person who uses a paper agenda journal, or a day timer as I scratch my mic. But it has to be laid out a very specific way. And I don't just write my to-dos in it. I write a bunch of things in it, and it literally becomes a part of me. So I cannot wait to sink my teeth and fingers into this book of yours. Okay. So do you want to talk more about that? I'm like, I feel like that was high level, but I know people are going to want to know about this. And for those of you who do not know, Kristen has her book available in Indigo. Now, I don't know if you guys understand what a big deal it is to be in a bookstore that is nationwide, but it is unheard of. Not unheard of. Obviously, they sell books and people make books. It's not easy.
No, not easy.
It's not easy. And you'll find the same 6 authors writing. You'll always find that crime novelist. You'll always find the Shopaholic series. You'll always find Jen Sincero. But for a new person, for their first book, to penetrate a market that is now available nationwide, that tells you the power and the promise of this particular piece of work. And it's not literary. It's a thing. It's a doing thing. So, okay, let's talk about the one.
Okay. Let's talk about the one book.
Yeah, sorry. It's called The One Book. My apologies.
It is. Yes. This is my own personal dog-eared, scratched up one book. It's hardcover, but we have paperback too.
I'm already attracted to this piece of art.
Well, You know what? I'm going to tell you about the artist behind this piece of art because I did not do this alone by a long stretch. And they are an incredible part of my journey.
Mm,
So it's a big book, right?
I
This
want
thing
it.
is substantial and it's heavy. And at first glance, some people are like, oh, I got to carry that around. And then they do it for a week and they're like, I can't leave the house without my book. This goes with me everywhere. And that's the idea. So you're right. It's not a lot of like sit down and read. In the first, I don't know, 25 pages, there's a preamble to explain the highlights of the one theory, as I call it. And it talks about the MVR triad, our most valuable resources, our time, money, and energy, and how that's fundamental to the whole theory. And I explore, there's lots of great theories out there around habits and which habits you can combine for high performance or whatever that may be. And I totally buy into that. I think habits are a result of practice and habits make it easy. And that's what we want to do as human beings. Our brains are hardwired to do what's easy because it's always conserving energy.
Yeah,
So that's why we're
pathologers.
looking.
Every time you learn something new, no wonder it gets painful. As an adult, you're sitting, I don't know, for those of you who've gone back and done your NBA, the first time you sit down, you're like, oh my God, I'm
Yeah,
exhausted. And
exactly.
it's 1 hour. You're like, oh,
Painful.
I have to do this for a lot more hours, but your brain is literally working. It's depleting glucose as you function.
Absolutely.
So if you're
Absolutely.
willing to try something new, expect that first little bit. I mean, the preamble, I think I cannot wait to get my hands into because I also love habit stacking. I feel again, this connection is very exciting to me, but it's like if you just know a little bit about what you're about to endeavor on and how
Yes,
easy your life is about to get,
that's right.
but you have to be willing to do that little bit. It's that
Yes.
global goal versus the local goal.
Yes, exactly. I love that. You have to be ready. And I talk about that in my very first blog about the book. You have to be
Mm.
ready. Otherwise, just don't do it because it will feel overwhelming. And that's not what I'm going for. You have to be ready. And there's lots of ways to check in with yourself to see if you are ready to make this commitment. But it gives you the explanation of what the 6 excellence potential habits are. So I believe my little formula, some of them are on repeat everywhere you look, but there's a couple that aren't. So I believe that if we practice organization, prioritization, creativity, storytelling, reflection, and visualization, I think if we can practice those, then things get easier, then life is simpler, and that's employing the power of one that counteracts the overwhelm. That's it.
Outstanding.
That's it.
Outstanding. I have like, it's interesting because I'm like, man, I cannot wait for this book. I have what's called a spiritual workout. And so it involves journaling, reading, putting something in.
Yeah.
Sometimes ideas come to me, but often good ideas don't come from scrolling on anything. Good
No.
ideas are pursued. So how are you feeding your brain? Visualization and writing things out
Yes.
and meditation and stillness. And it's like, wow. I mean, organization. If it's like kids crafts, I'm 10 out of 10 on that. But if it's like Excel spreadsheets, I really it hurts my whole being. That's okay. One day, I promise you, all of my Excel friends, I will learn that. But organization, prioritization.
Yeah.
What was the next one?
Creativity.
Creativity. Oh my God, creativity.
Yes.
And creativity doesn't have to be what people, you're not necessarily painting with a brush.
100%. And
You're not
so
painting with a brush.
for
It could
anyone
be
out there
anything.
saying no, and for anyone out there saying, I don't have a creative bone in my body, well, you actually do
Lies.
because you have different parts of your brain that we all have. And so here's the nursey side of it. And I'm sure you can appreciate this too. There's a concept called neuroplasticity. And the theory is what fires together stays together.
Mhm.
So if you are doing anything creative, that could be looking at a beautiful picture. It could be drawing or doodling. It could be making food, making music, dancing, writing creatively. It could be anything. If you're doing that while trying to solve a problem, you are creating a new neural pathway that didn't otherwise exist. And now you have a way for innovation and imagination to spark something new. So you do get smarter through creativity. Things do get easier through creativity, but it's a practice.
It is a practice. And okay, I'm a big neuroscience geek. Like if you would have said, Clarissa, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have been like a neuropathologist.
Yes.
Turns out my heart could not handle that sadness. That was a lot. I cry a lot. But that whole premise, what I realized in that world of neuroscience is there is so much latent human potential because we
Oh,
don't practice. And that new neural pathway that you just connected, that you just created, it's fresh, it's a baby, it's a tiny thing, and it needs nurturing.
totally.
And it's the first time you, like, how many times did you have to pedal on a bike before you found balance? And the second you found balance, you locked it in. And
Yes.
10 years later, when you haven't been on a bike, it takes you one pedal and your little wobbly two, and all of a sudden it's you're back in. And
Yeah.
so I encourage people to flex creativity in different ways. People sometimes love whatever, build a tower. I don't care. I draw with your kids. Go ask yourself, what could this be? How many times, I love the game It Is What It's Not.
Mm,
So you take an ordinary object like a water bottle or
yes.
a chapstick, and you say it is what it's not. So, okay, this is a chapstick. It's not a chapstick. It's a fill in the blank.
Yep.
It's
Exactly.
and you can make it anything. It's a
Yes.
mini lightsaber. It's
Yes.
and it that gets your brain moving, and it feels, it can actually give me headaches sometimes if I'm not like prepared for it. But that tells me I haven't fired and wired together in a little bit, and
Yeah.
it's now's a great time to practice.
Well, exactly. And, I creative thinking exercises, something I'm super passionate about. There's so many out there, brainstorming, but that's just idea storming. There's so many more. I was running workshops for entrepreneurs and business owners long before the book on how to employ creative thinking exercises. And, what you see, and this is definitely in the literature, you see this, it's scientifically proven, but those people who think on their feet a little bit more quickly, right? Or so people who have to facilitate, or people who are up there speaking in a public setting, or senior leaders who have to kind of analyze risks, make a decision very quickly, and run with it. Anyone who's quick-witted or a fast thinker or on their feet, or they can have a comeback like that, guaranteed they've practiced creativity in some way, and
Mhm.
they're used to doing it. So it is like I call it the genius superpower that we all have. You just have to exercise the muscle, right?
Totally.
So
Yeah,
it's in there. It's in there.
it is. Okay, you want to hear my new creative practice that I started doing? Okay, so I've decided, I have 3 younger sisters, and they're all funnier than me. All of them are funnier than me. And they're funnier because they are practicing what they say in their head, and they observe, 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 observe. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to observe things. I'm going to find the comedy in
Mm,
life. And so I sit and I look at an ordinary event, and I'm like, why is that funny? That's the question I ask
love
myself.
it.
And you know what a fun game, because
Yeah.
it's not why is that miserable? Why does that need to be changed? It's like, why is
Yes.
that funny?
Yes.
Like,
I
and
love it.
I could do that for hours. And
Mhm.
now it's a dinner party. Well, I say dinner parties. I go to restaurants with friends. That's not really a dinner
Yeah,
party, but I'm like, why is this funny?
I
and
love it.
and it gets you to think of things. Well, it's funny because XYZ. Oh, it's fun. And that's funny because, and all of a sudden you have all of these ideas. You
Yeah,
learn to see things differently, and you connect dots that otherwise appear disparate
that's right.
and completely unconnected. And, people at some point in my life have repeatedly told me, you stretch things. And I'm like, yeah, because they should be stretched.
Mhm.
You're going to
Yeah.
just let them like not be
Yeah.
stretched. And then when the people around you start seeing you practice, there's a theory that if your finger moves from an upright position to a 90-degree movement, that everything else in the universe agrees to that movement such that that
Mhm.
movement is allowed.
Yeah.
So if you start practicing that creativity muscle, like my question, hey, why is that funny?
Yeah.
The people around you start being generative as well. And we are
Totally.
generative beings,
That's
and
right.
humans have a fulfillment shaped hole that is often unsatisfied if we do not see progress or growth.
Yes.
And this
Yes.
generative creativeness is a sign of progress and growth at a neurological level. Our bodies don't understand. That's why comics continue to make comedy. Is it
Yes.
really progressing the next, I don't know, treatment for a disease that hasn't been cured? Maybe. Well, maybe laughter is. I don't know. I can't comment on that.
I
But
don't know.
they're doing it for the sake of doing it because it generates something. And
Yes.
so that has really challenged me, and it makes for really fun evenings. I will tell you
Oh, I
that.
love it. I think that's so good.
We
It's
can go
so
for
good.
dinner and do it.
Oh my gosh. Oh, yes, it would be the best. And I think what I love what you're saying here is that you've been able to adapt that idea around creativity for something that's meaningful to you. So for
Mhm.
anyone who's feeling, oh, I'm not creative, it's not artsy,
No.
it's anything that you want to stretch, imagine differently, consider differently. You will see the world in an entirely different way if you can exercise this muscle. And so that's why it's one of the habits. It's so important to me. It has to be a habit. Storytelling, same thing. And so this is a really important part of the book, ties a bit back to my dad, in that being able to recant and tell our stories, it validates us. It also is a means of teaching and explaining the world to other people, right? Every single culture over any measurement of time has used story to pass along lessons and cultural practices. So storytelling, we should be practicing this as a skill and building it in as a habit. But, we often think about in our hustle world and our busy times and our everything going 1,000 miles a minute, we sometimes lose sight of the value of like the little nanoseconds that fill up the day. And I can tell you, for me personally, I am most driven by time. In the theory, I ask you, what are you most driven by? Time, money, or energy? No right or wrong answer. We're just different. For me, it's time. And it's because I've lost most of my family members. I have my siblings and my nieces and my nephew and an aunt. The rest are captured here in my sleeve. Like it's, so time is just so precious to me. But it's those moments that when we capture them, they're going to be our legacy when we're gone. And my dad, he took the time, 12 years actually, to pull together his memoirs, the maps in England of where he used to live, the genealogy, the stories, everything. It took him 12 years. And it's a book like this high of pictures and all the things. There's nothing more meaningful in terms of like a physical item in my world than that, right? And so if we take the time, imagine we took the time to fill out one of these books, and you fill it out. You fill it out for an entire year, and I'll get to that in a minute. That's your story. You're telling your story. And when you're done for the year, you put it up on the shelf, you pick up a new one, and you do it all over again.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed.
It's your legacy.
It is. You know what? I have a hard time. My paper agendas, I have them on a bookshelf. I have them right now. And I'm like, yours is a lot prettier. I like how it's minimalist. I feel like that's going to be a drive and a vibe for me. But that to me makes sense. I'm like, it's the anthology of you.
Yes, it is. And so in the book, so those are the 6 habits. I won't go through them in all details, but creativity and storytelling, those are quite different. Within the book, though, it's now broken in, you keep turning the pages, and it's broken into 12 equal sections. 13, actually. One at the very beginning is like your big picture to kind of wrap your head around that global goal. What's your vision? What's your mission? What are your values? What are your strengths and areas for improvement? What are some positive affirmations that you want to help guide you for the year? Quotes and wisdom from people that you aspire to be more like. What would they say? I call it your wall of wisdom. If you went to someone for advice, and you could be anyone, what would they tell you? What would Maya Angelou tell you? What would Oprah Winfrey tell you? What would Simon Sinek tell you? Whoever it is for you. So that's the beginning section. It's kind of like your reference section, I suppose. You can keep coming back to
setting the standard.
Exactly.
Like set that standard.
Exactly. There's the bar.
Yeah, because standards are met.
Yes, imagine that.
Wants and desires are not always gotten, but standards are met.
100%, right?
So set your standard.
And the physical act of taking a pen or a piece of a pencil, putting it to the paper, we've got to feel it. And again, that's a neuroplasticity thing. When you write it down, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same as typing it.
It's there, and there's multiple modalities of learning. And when you look at the studies for retention and learning in children, it is far better for them to actually physically use their hands, because that's kinesthetic in that or tactile of some sort learning. It is audio because you cannot not say words in your head. So your audio cortex is activated, and then your visual there's 3 modalities of learning happening at once. So you want to cement that neural pathway. You want to make those affirmations true for you. I often have to rewrite affirmations in the world of what do I want to believe is true about me. And when I take on that, and I'm like, and I write it out, I'm like, oh, and then you write it out in the 3, and it's 3 modalities happening simultaneously. Yes. Could you ask for a better recipe? Do you want to supercharge what you believe about yourself? Do you want to supercharge your goals? Write them out.
It's that easy, right? Yeah. And so this is the principle. It's easy. It's simple. We don't have to overcomplicate it, right?
It's fun.
It's fun. Exactly. So then you get into the 12 monthly sections, and it's not dated. So you could start this October 1st. You could start it January 1st. It doesn't matter. You can start the book whenever. And the first section is like a 2-page calendar spread. So you can go in and put in your known dates, and you see it visually all at once, which is very powerful because we see the negative space. And we can ask ourselves, do we need to preserve this for the self-care and the filling up of the cup? Or do we want to see this as individual blocks of time? So it helps us with practicing prioritization of our time. So simple layout of your calendar. And then it goes on. It's got a money matters page. So there's a place for you to consider money. And we look at money a little differently. It's not just about what you make and what you spend. We also prompt you to say, what are you going to save? What are you going to give away? What could you sell? What could you buy? Right? What are the possibilities with money as one of your resources, not just in and out? There's a page on gratitude. So practices for gratitude. On focus, there's a 2-page spread for getting focused, because that's definitely a quick path to overwhelm if we're not focused. There's a 1-minute journal. So there's one line for every day of the month where you just have to jot down one thing, something you did, something you said, something that was funny, a song you're listening to, something. So you're telling your story. And so there's a bunch more pages within these sections. And then near the end, there's the planner part where you have a 2-page spread for every week. And there's a place to write down your appointments, place for you to set out 3 priorities and why they are your priorities, as well as your goal for the week. So I guess that more finite goal that you're looking at, what's coming next week. There's even a little space at the same size exactly as a sticky note. So if you got to make notes for yourself, they go there, and everything is just all in one place. And then next month comes along, you do it all over again. So yeah, there's, I think, 13 different exercises that repeat every single month, plus the planner. And what you're doing is you're practicing those 6 excellence potential habits without even knowing it. Because these exercises and they're all built with that psychology and method and theory embedded within it. So you don't even know you're doing it.
I love it. I'm here for peak performance.
Mm-hmm.
Give me more of that.
Yes.
We don't even know what we're capable of. That's the craziest thing. We don't even know. We have no idea.
Yeah.
And the thing is, your whole journey, that one step after the other, you didn't know you were going to write a book.
No. So if someone said to me the other day, I think Joanne, or it was a few months ago, and she's like, "You're an author now. You're a published author." And I'm like, looking like who me? Right? What? No. And because that was never the intention. I never sat down and said, I want to write a book. I fell into this. And now I have plans for the 2-book, the 3-book, the 4-book, the 5-book. I've got a 1-book podcast or a 1-program podcast. I've got a whole educational program that I'm going to be running in January. It's exploded, but it was never part of a plan.
No, and be willing to see things differently. So I know some people that listen to this are very planned and they have a whole thing. And if that's the way you be, that's the way you be. But there's also space that if you don't know where you were going, where you started, much like Kristen, I went into a psych undergrad with a Spanish minor because I was like, I'll make it useful by being able to speak in 21 countries. God, this. And lo and behold, that is not I just said yes to life.
Yeah.
Much like you, I said yes to opportunity. And rather than living by the confines or the constraints I created for myself or the definitions of what I thought success or life should look like, I said, well, wouldn't it be cool if I am the captain, the vice president or CEO of wouldn't it be cool if, and wouldn't it be cool if comes with some scary moments, but it also allows people like Kristen to come full circle, create multiple businesses and write a book. So let life surprise you. Be willing to be pleasantly surprised by life. Life doesn't just throw curveballs at you. Life lifes you all the time. So what if life pleasantly surprised you?
Well, that's just it. And there were so many things, as they always, it looks pretty now, right? There were so many things that didn't go right the first time though.
Totally.
Right. So you mentioned the suck you in graphics, right? The beautiful vision of it. I just have to show you one of the example pages. So this
and just describe it visually for the people who are not watching.
I sure will. Okay, so this picture here, you can't really see it.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different creativity challenges, exercises, and practices. And so it's all based on just different geometric shapes put into different patterns. But it's not just to color it in like a coloring book. If you were to look at that page right now and visualize it, it might look like a Zen coloring book page. It's not. There's an exercise at the bottom that challenges you to do something different. For example, one might be fill in each blank, like each square, with a letter as you like an actual letter as you write a letter to yourself, and make it random. So now you have a page of just random letters that you'll never be able to read out as a letter again, but you creatively used this picture that would traditionally been for coloring and used it in a different way, right? And so the entire book is done in black and white. We use dot grid. So for all of our dot grid lovers out there, because there's also scientific proof that that lends to more creativity.
Because there's no constraints.
Exactly. That's right.
I have a thing.
It's true. The typeface, the layout, the space, the negative space, all of this was planned out by my creative genius friend, Logan Gray, whom I met through this process. Graphic designer, photographer, hand poke tattoo artist, and so many other things, came to my rescue when we were in a crunch for getting this published, and the first graphic design just wasn't a good fit, and I had to find a new one. Started from scratch. I thought it was going to be a quick little tweak here and there. Nope. Logan was kind and honest, and they're like, nope, we need to completely redo the whole thing, and we did. And it is magical because of Logan. And in the process, they encouraged me. In the first version, I didn't have my little snippets or quotes or insights. I've gotten a bit of a reputation for having Kristenisms, and I get teased about people like it too. And Logan said, Kristen, you have to put them in there. Like, let's create space so that you have those little quotes. Every time you turn a page, it's not the same as the previous month, because there's a new suggestion or a tip or some encouraging words or something. So it is kind of like reading a book, but it's also like writing a book at the same time. But if it weren't for their utter magic, this book would not be what it is. It's all them. And so the two of us are incredibly proud of this. We're going to be doing a book signing at Indigo Chapters this month, which is like kind of mind-boggling. Because you mentioned, yeah, we got into physical stores, Chapters Indigo. We're available online pretty much anywhere around the world. So like Amazon and Chapters Indigo, Barnes and Noble, but it's not the same as being able to like physically touch the book when it's like this, right?
BFD is what I call those. A big effing deal.
Yeah.
That's so
it
fun.
Feels that way. It's also, it's just overwhelming in the sense of, it's so magical. What do I want to do with it? I want to pay it forward and share it with everyone else too, right? It's a good overwhelm.
It's so in the, like, it's like awe is what I would call it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't understand awe until I understood awe. And then that is awe, where it's like breathtaking and it's expansive and it's almost beyond comprehension. You're like, oh. And so you did it. So for those of you who are interested, Kristen is a vibe, and she will be signing copies and available to chit chat, I believe, from 11 to 5, October 15th in Edmonton, Alberta, at the South Edmonton Common Indigo. And we will provide the address in the show notes, a Google Maps link if you prefer. And if you get a chance to meet this person, this human who will dramatically from afar impact your way of living, your business, the way you see the world, and ultimately increase your performance. And maybe you're not ready to do it today, but wouldn't it be crazy for you to not buy it? Because sometimes anybody else wake up at 1 a.m. being like, now's the time, I must do this now. And so harness that. And also sometimes readiness is a choice. So
that's true.
Yeah. So consider that if you're in complete resistance and this isn't for you, fine. That's okay. I'm not here to judge that. But if you're, sometimes I make choices out of safety and not opportunity and possibility. And so for me, it's an absolute hell yes. And I can't wait. I can't wait.
Well, I can't wait for you to hold it, see it, touch it, use it.
I'm going to hug it.
Oh, it's now that people, so that we actually launched this back in December of last year. So there's like people, users, I call them one bookers, they've been using it since. And now the stories and the testimonials are starting to come in. And like, it brings me to tears. I've had business owners say, my business was going nowhere until I implemented the system. And I've, tripled my revenue this year. And I attribute it to being more organized and being able to prioritize and being more creative. And they can see that tangible difference. It blows me away that for me, it was just so obvious in a way of doing things, but it's actually helping people who were really struggling. And I mean, I designed it and came up with the idea for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, professionals, even creatives like me as the jewelry designer definitely needs this too. But you know what I learned? And I feel kind of silly not really seeing this until like 2, 3 months ago. University students. And it was my son, my 19-year-old son, and his incredible girlfriend who were like, yeah, I think we need this too. And so, she uses it on a regular basis. They went and told their friends about it, and now they've wanted one. But of course, because they need harmony too, because they're susceptible to overwhelm too, right?
University is designed for overwhelm.
Exactly.
But the truth is, it doesn't need to be that way. So
it doesn't. No. So you know what? I think that there's a little bit of something in there for everybody, and I'm still figuring it out. I'm discovering, I guess.
Yes.
That's the journey I'm on right now, is just discovering what this is. I don't know. But it's
so fun. That is so fun. Oh my goodness. I don't want to cut this short, but I know that if the file gets too big, they won't let me post it. So we're going to bring this to a close. Are there any final takeaways you would like to share with the listeners?
I think there's just so much. Be kind to one another. Kindness costs you nothing, but it pays off in so many ways. And then the message that I love to just take with me everywhere that I go, because I know it helped me get to where I am, is I'll believe in you.
Oh, so
I will.
Good.
I don't need to know what you're doing, what you're trying to do, what you've been through. I don't need to know any of that. If you're going to show up and try, I believe in you. And say that to someone in a day and see how their world changes. So pay forward the kindness and pay forward the belief. And I think we can change the world.
Could not have said it better myself. Kristen, it was such a pleasure to have you on the Be Better podcast. Thank you again so much for your time. And I cannot wait to see the impact the one book has on this world.
Thank you.
If this podcast has landed with you, served you, provided value, please let us know. Give us a like, subscribe, share it with a friend that you know it will make a difference for. We are here to be a contribution and a service to others. We cannot wait to see you next time. Thanks again for tuning in. Take care.